How did a bright, young college student with big life plans end up dead on a city sidewalk after falling 17 stories from above? There are so many unknowns in this case. There's no debate about that. But Breanna Aguilera's mom says there is much more going on in this mystery. She claims there is evidence that it could be a murder. The new possibility that she is laying out about what happened after a big college football game and what she says her daughter may have been in a fight about prior to her death. We're on the case, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Hey guys, real quick, for many of us, it is open enrollment again, and prices for health insurance can just make you feel like you're being exploited. The premiums, the fine print. Well, Crowd Health, our sponsor, is different. It's members like you funding each other's bills directly. Now, if something big happens, you pay the first $500 and the Crowd funds the rest. They have a track record of handling major events, including bills over $1 million, giving you confidence. Plus, you get access to low-cost prescriptions, testing, and high-quality doctors. So far, members have saved over $40 million. This open enrollment, take your power back. Join Crowd Health to get started today for $99 for your first 3 months using code ONTHECASE at joincrowdhealth.com. Crowd Health is not insurance. Opt out. This is how we win. Joincrowdhealth.com. Police in Austin, Texas have released a new statement in the wake of the attention that is now surrounding the death of Texas A&M student Breanna Aguilera. She is the 19-year-old girl who police say fell to her death from an apartment 17 stories up overnight between late Saturday and early Sunday. Now, before we look at how the statements from police, now 2 of them, compare, let's talk about what we know about the timeline leading up to Breanna's death. So Breanna was in Austin for a big football game between her college, the visiting Texas A&M Aggies, and their big rival, the Texas Longhorns. This game, it was a night game, kicked off around 6:30 Central Time. It's unclear if Breanna went into the stadium or just enjoyed the tailgates in Austin that day. Anybody who's been to a big college football game knows that there is a lot of drinking going on throughout the day when you have a big football game. Toxicology tests aren't back yet, so we don't know if Breanna was intoxicated at the time she died. Her mom told People that she was not able to get in touch with Breanna in the hours leading up to the game. Now, we know after the game that Breanna went to an apartment building in Austin for a gathering. It is believed to have been a gathering of about 15 people in this apartment unit. That is according to Breanna's mom. The building itself is 21 stories total, and Breanna was in an apartment on the 17th floor. We don't know what transpired next. We do know around 1 o'clock in the morning, there was a person walking by the building that spotted Breanna on the ground. She had fallen more than a dozen stories to her death. Now, this is a picture that Breanna's mom shared on Facebook, and this is the group of people that Breanna's mom claims that her daughter was with. We are blurring all their faces except for her daughter. It does appear that they are on a balcony. Now, it is interesting to note that police were not alerted by anyone in the apartment. No one from the apartment, to our understanding, called 911 because it was that bystander walking by who found Breanna's body on the ground and then alerted the authorities. Now, Breanna's mom also posted this video. It is from TikTok. It has gone viral. It is a man describing a fight that he says he heard the night that Breanna died, and he also puts Breanna's name in a hashtag. Here's part of it.
I start walking around the corner or whatever. I start leaving the bar. I walk around the corner. I get on Rio Grande. I hear a girl saying, "Get the off me."
Now again, police have said they don't have any evidence of foul play at this point, but we are showing you this video and we're laying out what Breanna's mom says to show why she believes that this was not an accident. Breanna's mom thinks that she may have more details about what played out, but before we get into that, I do want to compare these statements that were put out by police in Austin, because here's the initial statement. It said, quote, "On Saturday, November 29th, 2025 at 12:47 a.m., Austin police officers responded to a report of an unresponsive individual at 2101 Rio Grande Street. Now, when officers arrived on scene, they located an adult female who was not responding. The individual was pronounced deceased on scene at 12:57 a.m. At this time, this incident is not being investigated as a homicide. There are no indications of suspicious circumstances. The cause of death will be determined by the Travis County Medical Examiner's Office. The investigation remains ongoing. Now, Breanna's mom has told media outlets that police suggested to her that Breanna perhaps jumped or took her own life, and she is strongly rejecting that possibility. Here is what she wrote on Facebook. Quote, "This was not accidental. Someone killed my Bree and gave all the group of friends a lot of time to come up with the same story. My daughter would not jump 17 stories from a building, and to be labeling this as a is insane. My daughter loved life and was excited to graduate and pursue her career in law." She then calls out the Austin police detective, saying he's not doing his job, and then goes on to say, "How is it that certain friends left immediately and the person who was living at the apartment complex vacated her apartment ASAP?" Now, in the wake of this attention, really brought on by Breanna's mom, the media coverage of this, Austin police released a new statement last night, and it reads, quote, "The case involving the death of Breanna Aguilera remains open, active, and under thorough investigation. Multiple detectives continue to interview witnesses, gather evidence, and work carefully through the details of the incident. At this stage in the investigation, the facts obtained do not indicate that this is a homicide. This case continues to be treated strictly as a death investigation, and there is no evidence to suggest or support any suspicious or criminal circumstances surrounding Miss Aguilera's passing. The cause of death will be determined by the Travis County Medical Examiner's Office." So it goes on to say, quote, "Every loss in our community is taken seriously, and every life is deserving of care, dignity, and a complete investigative process. Austin Police extends our heartfelt condolences to Breanna Aguilera's family, friends, and all who are grieving her loss. We recognize the deep pain that accompanies the unexpected passing of a loved one, and our thoughts remain with those who are navigating this difficult time. Our detectives remain committed to investigating the full details surrounding the death of Miss Aguilera. We will continue to share new details as they become available." So that statement, it is a bit longer, but it still has the same sentiment as the first statement, which is police just do not at this point believe that it's a homicide. But Breanna's mom is continuing to push back. She gave an interview to People, and she claims in the hours leading up to Breanna's death that she had an argument with a girl. And you remember that TikTok video I showed you. It's unclear if that is specifically Breanna involved, but Breanna's mom believes that the fight would have been with another girl about her boyfriend. She goes to tell People, quote, "I'm thinking either someone shoved her over the balcony, or when my daughter does drink, she has the tendency, and she is so thin and frail, she cannot handle alcohol. And I think that maybe either it might have been that, and they probably got scared and threw her over the balcony, or they shoved her off." So it does appear that she is suggesting maybe alcohol poisoning could have been involved. We don't know the results of a toxicology test as of yet on Breanna's remains. Now, Breanna's mom also shared this picture of her daughter with friends that she says was on the day of her death on the balcony that she claims her daughter fell from. Now, again, we're blurring everyone in this picture but Breanna, who's on the right, and you can see here the height of Breanna. And Breanna's mom says that's key. She writes, quote, "My daughter is 5'2", and look at the rail. Another mother shared this photo, and the detective is claiming she accidentally fell over or jumped. How is it possible to get on this rail with boots, specifically cowboy-style boots? The situation does not make sense," end quote. Police have said that they will share more information as it becomes available in this investigation, but again, they don't believe that this is a homicide at this time. Stephanie Rodriguez, Breanna's mom, also said that her daughter was a law student. She dreamed of going to Texas A&M. The idea of her taking her own life to her mom, it just doesn't make sense because she says her daughter was living her best life. Joining us now to help us kind of walk through what we know at this point, what we might need to learn as this investigation goes on, and certainly you're hearing a little bit of a contradiction between what Breanna Aguilera's mom is saying and then what police in Austin are saying. Retired NYPD Detective David Sarney, it's always great to have you on Law and Crime. What do you make at this point of law enforcement saying it doesn't appear that there's anything that suggests that this was a homicide, but then you have Breanna's mom who is very adamant that there's more to this story?
Thank you for having me. And I have to go through this a little bit, and I think communication between the police and the unfortunately the decedent's family has to be better. And that's what you have to look at. It's Breanna. And, whatever was said and the communication might be lacking. It may have been improper to say anything right away. If you're putting out in the media that you don't think it's a homicide, you treat every investigation, especially death investigations, you treat it as a homicide until it's not, based on the facts that you have. And that, I think, is where it happened. And now you've made the mother more of an adversary than an ally. And she has information. Because this is what happens with these these death investigations. You have a person who's 19 years old at a party. Apparently, might have been alcohol. There's claims of alcohol being consumed and the like. And she ends up 17 floors down near that. Maybe she fell from the balcony. Did she fall or was she pushed? And you're going to find this out with the investigation. But what happens is, once you alienate the family, you now have somebody who's going to, everything you say now will be fought against, that this didn't happen. To say it's a homicide or it's not going to be investigated as a homicide probably shouldn't have happened. I don't know the communication, how they communicated with the parent, with the mom in this, but now you're going to have they're not going to believe you. And there's a lack of trust now between the family and the investigation that's going forward. But you're going to do what you're going to do as an investigator. This is an investigate DOA. You have a girl who's 19 years old at a party who is now found 17 floors below for where she was at. So you're going to do the interviews. You're going to do the video canvas. You're going to do an extensive video canvas. You're going to need to have any information she has from her cell phone. The mother has apparently text message from the cell phone. And the mother also tried to report it earlier as a missing person. So a lot of things came into play where you've now made the family an adversary to your investigation. And you really need their help in this, because you will have people present at the scene who are going to either say anything or say nothing. How many people were really actually at it? They're saying 15. Were there more? Were there less? Did anybody see, were witnesses to this incident that caused her to fall 17 floors? Was it an argument outside? Was she pushed? You're going to look at video and everything along those lines, but you lost the family in this, and that's the thing you don't want to do, because they're your allies. You don't want to make them adversaries, and that's what's going to happen now. In the media, it's going to be beat up a lot against the police, and I'm sorry if the communication was poor. I think they have to really rectify that in order to move forward, especially with the mother.
Because and listen, I can't imagine what she's going through, right? And to feel like there's something more there, to feel like you're not being heard. I think everybody understands like the anger and frustration with that. Part of the elements to this that I'm still kind of waiting for more information from police on is that nobody in the apartment, it seems, called 911. It's not like it was this moment where maybe she's backing up and she falls over the railing and everybody sees it and they're like, oh my gosh, call 911. It was a bystander that was walking on the street that found her body after it fell. I don't know how, it was around 1 o'clock in the morning. Don't know what time they believe that she fell. I'm sure they have security footage of that. But it just seems, I wouldn't say odd, because I'm not trying to act like there's more going on here than what police is saying, but it seems like for police to say, we believe that this was an accident, there's no sign of a homicide, to reach that conclusion, like someone must have told you something about what happened, or unless there's surveillance video of her, going over this balcony in some way. I don't know.
Yeah, that again, the problem is the communication. And I think what happened is when the press release comes out, how far in the investigation are you? These death investigations, especially to a 19-year-old, was there drinking involved? There's a possibility of drinking. She was at a tailgate earlier. Was she, apparently, there's one story that she was removed. She was told to leave because she was intox. I don't know. That's going to be part of the investigation that detectives follow, because we have, unfortunately, decedent, Breanna, dead there. The ME's office that you're going to utilize, and obviously you're going to in an autopsy, is there any, and talking about 17 floors, the trauma on the body is severe, but is there anything outside the trauma that would be from a fall that it might have been present on Breanna's body? So that's what you're going to look at too, and those are the questions you're going to ask. You're going to ask anyone that she was in contact with. You're going to try and do a track of her cell phone records, her cell sites. Apparently her mother said her cell site hit it at a creek earlier, around 6 o'clock. You're going to look at all of these things. She was on a do not disturb. These are things that come into play, and that's part of the investigation. And that's why you need the parent, you need the mother really involved in this, that you show that you're empathetic to her plight. Her daughter is dead. That's what it comes down to. We're supposed to find out through the totality of circumstances to this case whether or not it is an accident or there's something more to it. And that's what it comes down to. These investigations, from what the autopsy will show, that the cause of death, but the manner of death is up to the investigators based on what they find out in the investigation. So you check her cell phones. You're going to speak to anyone who's with her prior to being at that hotel, at that apartment building, and this is where you have to really be honed in on the questions. Was the door to the balcony open or closed? Who was with her at the time? Because we're talking about intox. If you're talking about someone who's intox, how intox was she? So these are things these are questions that come into bear with this. Because unfortunately, when people are intoxicated, decisions are poor, body, coordination is not there. We don't know, and that's going to come out one toxicology, autopsy, but the interviews of everybody involved and getting their phones, because that's another thing. You want to see whose phones, because if there's something that someone will do, especially in this generation, that younger generation, is take video. So if there's video of the party, is there video of anything going on? Is there a video of the incident itself? And you have to kind of work that as far as the detectives were in that part.
And just seeing the mom's Facebook, and she posted a picture today of her daughter on what she says was the balcony that apparently, ahead of the game, everybody's kind of tailgating throughout the day, and they were at this apartment building, 17 floors up, and there's this balcony, and she points out that her daughter is 5'2". And it doesn't seem like, for me, I'm a little bit tall, I'm like 6'2" or so. So like, a railing, I think about it, like would come to my waist. And like, even then, like leaning back, it would take a lot to go over the railing. I guess just in your training as law enforcement, and I'm sure you've had cases where someone falls sadly to their death like this, like how does like height, weight, and the height of the railing, how does that all kind of factor into determining what might have happened?
Well, there again comes back to what you're going to do, a reconstruction of the crime scene a little bit, trying to get an idea. Could it have been an accidental fall? But you really need to really talk to the interview everybody present in that room. That's what you really need to do, because accidents happen. You don't want to tell the parent that. You don't want to say that, because this is her daughter, and as a parent you can feel that, and as a parent I could see that. Do these things happen? Unfortunately, in New York City, we've had people who've locked themselves out, try to climb through a fire escape, fall, and unfortunately, die. Accidents happen. But we're supposed to be, as investigators, determined by the facts available to us what actually happened. We're the truth finders. And sometimes the truth may hurt, but my thing is you don't want to put anything out into the ether that will deter from the investigation. Because if you say it's not a homicide, then you're not treating any investigation. There's a bias to it. We call it confirmatory bias. We're not looking to do that. When it comes to investigate DOA, anytime I've dealt with a DOA in my team and my office, we always took it to the level of, we don't know what it is until we find out the facts. And that's what it comes down to, the totality of circumstances. And that's what you have to do as an investigator. Because once you sully the investigation, say, well, it's not this, it's not that, let the facts lay themselves out. And that's the facts are going to come out by the interviews, by the reconstruction of the scene itself. All of those things will come into play. And my thing is, you have to repair the relationship with Breanna's mother. That's paramount to this, because no matter what you say now, she is going to negate it by some other way. So you have to kind of incorporate her into the investigation. Obviously, tell her not what you think, but what you know. And that's what it comes down to. And I think what happened is, that's where it came down to, is we think it's not this, but once you say that, and I've seen parents, that's not what happened. We'll find out. And I think a sit down or some sort of communication with the mother will alleviate a lot of these situations. And that's the thing with the media now. They're going to catch on this, and rightfully so, because you don't want to put anything out that's wrong. Because now you have to backtrack, and now Austin PD sort of redirected themselves, saying, well, it's a death investigation. But don't put out it's a homicide, not a homicide, until you determine that fact.
Because that was the other part too for me, is in terms of the way that people interpret, and we in the media interpret like a press release. And it was pretty defiant in some ways, the language in the first statement they said, which was there's no sign that it's a homicide. And maybe from the public information officer's standpoint, that's saying like it's not showing that it isn't a homicide, but at this point we haven't seen anything. But then at the same time, if they don't mention the word homicide, then there could be speculation going the other way that people think it is. And I know you train people and teach people who are going into law enforcement. How do you handle that in terms of the information you're giving out, but trying to control what you can control in terms of the speculation that can come with what one line says in a release out to the media?
Well, one thing is, with the NYPD has a large office, Deputy Commissioner of Public Information. Our thing has always been, and that's one thing about, again, the NYPD is a little different. We're a lot bigger. It's a larger department. But the reality is, as far as training for death notifications, is not really there. There's policy. They just put policy into New York State as of 2023. I started doing the training of this, and I still do it with the NYPD for death notifications in general, for the last maybe 7 or 10 years at this point. But before that, when I was a detective, we didn't have any of this training. So you have to sort of really be, and I don't want to say be political, but you have to only say what you know. Right now we have a death investigation. We're following up to determine the totality of circumstances, what happened to Breanna. That's what it comes down to. And once you put out those words, those buzzwords, homicide, suicide, it does change the dynamic on the public opinion side, as if the police are trying to hide something and they're not doing their work. Let me tell you, detectives will do their due diligence. Their name is on this case. It's important to them. And I guarantee you, and I'm not going to say the detective's name, I know that was put out there by the mom. That's not my concern. My concern is we want to do what's right for the investigation and to help the mom understand the facts of this, whether it's A, B, or C. And we don't know yet. We'll find this out as the case goes. But you've got to fix that situation. You've got to be careful what you speak when you speak to a family member and death notifications and your information. And one thing is you don't want to lead them and say, we're going to catch this guy, we're going to guarantee it's not this, it's not that. Unless you have the facts and you know it exactly, then maybe you say it. But if you don't know the facts, don't say what you think. That's the one thing we really stress is, unless you have real solid evidence or solid facts to talk about, and you also want to make sure the media doesn't get it before you. You want to keep the family up to date as much as possible in any of these situations. And Breanna's mom has the right to know what's going on. And the detective has to really open that corridor and actually, maybe take a step back, say, yeah, we apologize for how it went, but this is what we're going to do from now on. We're going to communicate with you within a couple of hours, what we have. If we don't have anything, you have my number, you have my email, you can contact me so you can get the information directly instead of getting it from the media, which will be all over this case because now it is a media case.
And I think too, like another media, case that's received a lot of media attention. It's a different story in a lot of ways, but it's Ellen Greenberg out of Philadelphia. And there's just been so much criticism of how police responded that day, whether that's fair or not. And the idea that it was said to be a suicide from the very beginning, and then you have the family that's been pushing back against that for years. In this case, I think of somewhat of a chaotic scene on a day where there's a lot of drinking in Austin because of the football game, and police show up to this scene. Who knows what the witnesses said about, Breanna, her level of intoxication, whether someone actually did see something, maybe didn't call 911, we don't know. But how does the way the responding officers that first day, how they characterize what happened, their account of what they saw when they showed up, how does that impact a case long term when it comes to the amount of resources that go into investigating a suicide, if that's what they characterize it as, or at least a perhaps accidental death compared to a homicide?
Well, that's definitely important to talk to the responding officers. Responding officers are supposed to secure the scene as best as possible and try to detain, within a reasonable amount of time, the people at that location. That's what they're looking to do. So the whole problem is you have a body that's down on the 17th floor. They're dealing with that. They have to figure out where that body was from, and they're going to have to locate the location where she fell from. That's how they know 17 stories. They go back up, they find out what happened. So somewhere along the line, someone was able to tell them that where she fell from. So they have Breanna's body on the ground. Now they have to go to that apartment, and then try to detain as best as possible the people there within a reasonable amount of time. Resources were probably stretched, unfortunately, when you talk about police, and especially talk about Austin. Their police department has been way diminished in personnel. It's a problem for that. It's a problem for many police departments now. These sometimes will create problems as far as response time, as far as able to secure a scene properly, because now you have a decedent that's in an area that has to be secured. Now you have to go to the location to find out where it happened. So the amount of personnel available may be limited. The amount of time it takes for responding officers and detectives and more responding officers to get to that scene may be long. So these are things you have to come into play. And I understand the mom did not get notification of her daughter's death for several hours, and there may be reasons for that. But one thing you have to understand is police do what they can with the available resources they have. And I can't criticize something that I see way too often. And people have to realize, because of the diminished capacities of many law enforcement as far as personnel, retention, and recruitment, this has created a chasm of these type of cases where people feel there should be immediate responses and immediate things. We'd like to do that. We have, investigative steps, we do all of this, but things take time. And I don't know how much time it took between, well, the 911 call comes in at about 12:56, decedent at 12:57, she's declared dead there. Call comes in at 12:54. Now, how long did it take for the police to get to that room to find people there? And then, were there more? The mom says there's 15 people. Were there more than 15 people there? That's where you're going to have to see. Hopefully, there's cameras in that complex where you can see people either leaving or in the hallway or in the lobby, wherever it's going to be, and then try to pin them down to see who was in that room at the time. Breanna was up in that room, and right now we have an investigate. That's what you have, an escape DOA. I'm not going to say one way or the other, but she fell, either pushed or fell. We'll find this out with the case. But she is no longer running that apartment. Who was there to see or have anything available information that could determine how that happened?
And we'll see what happens next. I mean, obviously, just continue to just feel awful for this family and what they're going through, and now the attention that is on this case. How does that impact the investigation as well? Retired NYPD Detective David Sarney, it's always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much. Stay safe.
Now, as this story has been getting attention, we have seen a lot of people offering support to Breanna's family. There is a GoFundMe. It has raised tens of thousands of dollars. That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.